Hello, my name's Freese. I'm a watchmaker and I'm making another video for Finest Hour. In this video we're going to be looking at this double pusher Lemania Chronograph from 1976. This is a rare watch and I'm very much looking forward to taking it apart and showing you the condition of the movements and telling you a little bit about it. So we'll head over to the bench now and make a start. Okay, so we've got this watch on the bench now, and as you can see it's certainly in original condition, albeit with a broken crystal, and we've got some bits of paint on the case. And the watch is generally showing a lot of signs of its life, which in some ways are quite appealing because obviously it does give evidence to the history that this watch contains, being nearly 50 years old now. In 1969, the Ministry of Defence changed its wristwatch chronograph specification from a single pusher to a double pusher, and this was to enable the wearer to pause the timing of an event and then subsequently resume the stopwatch function. This contrasts with the earlier single pusher chronographs, which only reset the stopwatch function after having paused the timing. These exceptionally rare chronographs were issued to pilots of the Royal Navy, and only a mere 500 are believed to have been issued over 2 years. So it's 250 in 1975 and 250 in 1976. Moving inside the watch, as it were, the 1872 caliber movement, which powers the watch, is largely based upon the more famous 321 caliber movement of the early Omega Speedmasters, also made by Lemania. Sadly, the Lemania Watch Company is no longer in existence, but it has become something of a cult brand in recent years, and its watches are very much cherished by collectors. Lemania supplied a number of different armed forces from all over the world. Their movements are extremely well made and are renowned for keeping excellent time, making them a good fit for a rugged life in the services, and as we can see from this watch, it certainly had a rugged life. Lemania specialised in the production of chronographs. Chronographs are inherently complicated to manufacture, and for this reason many watch companies brought in movements from specialists like Lemania. They supplied amongst others Omega, and that was the movement that powered the first watch on the moon. There's a Lemania movement inside that watch, and luxury brands Vacheron Constantin and Patek Philippe. So I've now removed the back from the watch. The back was really tight. I don't think it's been off for a long time, and so it required the actual case to be put into a clamping tool in order to actually get the back to move. You normally see this if a watch has been just left for a number of years, and it certainly does suggest that that is the case in this instance. And now that we've removed the back, you'll be able to see the engraved numbers on the back there, 76 here to indicate 1976. And looking at the movement, I'm really pleased with the condition of the movement. Although it is dirty, there is no real rust or corrosion on any of the components of the chronograph that I can see. So I'm optimistic that when I take this movement apart, it really is going to be just a case of a very sort of straightforward, sympathetic servicing procedure on the movement. So what I'll do now then, I'm going to take the movements and the dial and hands out of the case, and we'll have a look at those. So I've now taken the movements and the dial and the hands out of the case. As you can see, there's been a huge improvement just by taking that glass out of the way, because we can now see the really lovely condition of the dial here. The dial has aged on the luminous markers, which is really nice because they've aged to a really attractive sort of custard yellow colour. So that's really nice to see that, as well as the original lume in the hour and the minute hands. It's really great when you have this moment of taking the movement out of the case, especially when the glass is as bad as this one was, because it's always a surprise to see how good they look. And this is something that we can obviously show off with a new crystal, which will fit when it comes to that stage in the repair. I've now reached the point where I've separated the movement into some of its individual components, and I thought I'd stop at this stage just to show you some of the parts, because a chronograph watch, although despite being seemingly complicated with the addition of a separate timekeeping area, it being the chronograph facility, the actual movement itself is the same. So with the main plate here, all of the parts are loaded onto the main plate. There's a barrel and mainspring here, and this is the spring that you can see inside the barrel. So when you turn the crown to wind the watch up, this spring gathers around a central arbor and then forces the power onto the teeth around the edge of the barrel through a series of wheels, through the centre wheel, first of all, third wheel, fourth wheel, escape wheel, down to this balance wheel here. And the balance wheel does the job of regulating that power as it works its way down the train. So this is all the same as you would see in a normal three-handed or two-handed mechanical watch. So that part of it is the same, but then the only difference is that on top of the three-quarter plate here that supports the parts of the timekeeping, you have separate components which allow for the separate measurement of time. So that means that you can engage and disengage that mechanism with the start, stop and the reset pushers. And it's simply a case of just transferring the movement of the train through this 3/4 plate with a pivot here onto a new series of wheels that are on the top. And those wheels go all the way through the movement and have the hands fitted to them on the other side. So for example, this is the second recorder wheel, goes straight through the middle, and it has the second recorder hand at the middle of the movement fitted to the end of it. And it's just driven from the pivot that comes away from the train under the 3/4 plate. So it is really quite a simple mechanism, and you see various different chronograph movements, but in terms of design and the way that this function is achieved, in my opinion, this particular movement is probably one of the most functional designs, because when they came up with this idea, it was a refinement of an earlier movement, and the earlier movement had a column wheel here rather than a cam. So that meant that when you started the chronograph with this lever here, it would turn a wheel round, which went start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, and the wheel would continue to rotate. In this instance, you just have a cam which acts as a switch, like an on-off switch. It's been simplified, and they've also simplified other areas of the movement as well to provide a very functional movement that has little in the way of intrinsic faults. Most watch movements generally have a particular thing about them that is a weakness. Say, for example, with the Rolex design of movements, the rotor post is a problem. So when the rotor's spinning, the rotor post can often weaken. But with this movement, I'm struggling to think of anything that generally causes a problem with them, other than the mainspring breaking, which is a fault that is common to all manually wound wristwatches. So what I need to do now is get all of these parts into the cleaning machine and complete the disassembly of the 3/4 plate, take the spring out of the barrel and so on, a few other parts to take care of, like the keyless work. So we'll get the movement clean, and then I'll come back to you when the movement is fully assembled. So I've completed the service on this movement, and as you can see, it really has come up well. The movement is in really good condition, and it's incredible to repair a watch that's from 1976 and to look at the movement and think that it could have been made 10 years ago. It's in such lovely condition, and it's also testament to the durability of these movements. They are very well made and don't generally tend to show many signs of wear. So as you can see, there's not really anything to point out. The movement is in such a nice condition. I'll be surprised if it had a full service before. So I expect there may well have been the first full service that has been done on this movement. Movement parts are all in very good condition, so the service procedure entailed just obviously disassembling the watch, as you saw earlier, then ultrasonically cleaning all of the parts, and then reassembly, lubrication and regulation of the movement. So overall, really pleased with how this has come out. And what we need to do now is to obviously turn the watch over and show you how it looks with that new crystal. Okay, so now you can see the watch is complete, and we have a new crystal fitted here and a clean of the case, and this has worked wonders on the appearance of the watch. It really has brought the watch back to life without taking away its character. You can still see a few very slight marks, obviously marks of wear the watch has received over the years, but the overall condition is excellent. It's original, and the new crystal is showing off that lovely original dial really well. So I think, in conclusion, I'm really happy with the way that this watch has come out. So I really enjoy these repairs where you're able to just service the movement and just do something with the crystal to make sure that you can see the dial nicely, and then just to clean the case, because you get the character of the watch retained, but you also get a really attractive watch at the end of it as well that shows its age, but at the same time it still has plenty of its character and plenty of the spirits about the watch still intact.